The Johnsons had always loved their quiet suburban life, nestled among neatly trimmed lawns and white picket fences. That morning, the sun gleamed off the sidewalks, children laughed in the distance, and the scent of freshly baked bread wafted from the Johnson kitchen. It seemed like any other peaceful day. But for Michael Johnson, the father, an uneasy feeling had been gnawing at him all night. He couldn't shake the emails from the HOA. Strange, threatening messages demanding a $5 late fee on a perfectly legitimate community assessment. The fine seemed absurd, even laughable, but the tone in their messages was aggressive, hinting at consequences for non-compliance. Michael's wife, Laura, tried to calm him while preparing breakfast, but his brows were furrowed, his mind racing. Their son, Jason, had just returned home after completing a long deployment as a Special Forces operative. Jason had always been calm under pressure, his gaze sharp and thoughtful. But even he noticed his father's unease. Ethan, their youngest, bounced in cheerfully, oblivious to the tension. Michael poured coffee, his fingers gripping the mug tightly, imagining worst-case scenarios. Little did the Johnsons know, this seemingly mundane HOA dispute was about to escalate into something no neighbor could have predicted. By noon, their front door would be tested by people claiming authority, and they would quickly learn that Jason's presence was the key that would change everything. At precisely 11:30 a.m., the tranquility of the Johnson driveway was shattered by the low rumble of black SUVs approaching. Michael's stomach sank as three men in ill-fitting uniforms stepped out. Their HOA cops' badges were cheap imitations, but the confidence in their stride suggested they thought they owned the neighborhood. "Mr. Johnson, we're here about your outstanding $5 fine," the tallest man barked, waving a clipboard, like a weapon. "We're authorized to enforce payment immediately." Laura stepped protectively in front of the front door, her voice trembling. "This is private property. You have no right to enter." The men laughed dismissively, their tone bordering on menace. "We have every right. Compliance is not optional," the leader said, glancing at the house as if measuring it for invasion. Jason, hearing the commotion from his room upstairs, quietly moved to the staircase. His boots made barely a sound against the polished hardwood. Michael noticed his son's presence and felt a surge of relief mixed with tension. Jason had trained to handle far worse than a few overconfident HOA enforcers, but even Michael didn't fully know the limits of his son's skills. The men advanced toward the front door, oblivious to the fact that Jason, a trained operative, was already analyzing their movements. The air felt heavy, charged with anticipation. This wasn't just a dispute over $5. It was a collision of audacity and preparedness. The tallest HOA man reached for the doorknob, his fingers curling around the polished brass as if ownership of the house were his birthright. Michael's voice cracked slightly, pleading, "Step back. You don't want this to escalate." Jason silently descended a few steps, his hand resting on the side of the staircase railing, ready. Laura's eyes widened as she realized her husband's concern was no exaggeration. The men's confident smirks faltered slightly under the unspoken tension. "Listen," the leader said, waving the clipboard again. "All you have to do is pay the fine. It's $5. We don't want trouble." "Trouble started when you stepped onto our property without permission," Jason said calmly, finally stepping into view. His presence shifted the energy instantly. Dressed casually, he looked like any other young man, but the calm authority in his posture told a very different story. The HOA men froze. Something in his gaze made them reconsider. Jason's calm, measured tone contrasted sharply with their nervous movements. The clipboard shook in the hands of the tallest man. Outside, the suburban neighbors paused in their routines, sensing the unusual tension. They didn't know who Jason was or what he had endured in special forces, but they could feel the weight of the moment. Jason moved a step closer to the men, his expression calm but unreadable. "I suggest you step off the porch and leave before this becomes a serious problem for all of us," he said. His voice was quiet, but it carried a weight that made even the leader pause. Michael felt a surge of pride. His son had returned from deployment hardened by experience, but he had never seen Jason use intimidation. This was not aggression. It was controlled authority. The fake HOA men exchanged uneasy glances, realizing that this confrontation was no longer about a trivial fine. One of the shorter men, noticeably shaky, whispered, "Maybe we should just leave." The leader, however, tried to maintain his facade of control. "Don't get cocky, kid. This is a matter of authority." Jason didn't flinch. "Authority isn't earned by wearing a fake badge," he said. His eyes swept the property, assessing every exit, every possible threat. "And trespassing isn't a negotiation." The air felt taut, as if holding its breath. Laura's hand found Michael's, squeezing it tightly. Even Ethan, peeking from behind the curtains, sensed the danger, the unusual stillness that marked an impending resolution. The leader made a sudden move toward the door, reaching for his phone to call backup or perhaps to document their victory. Jason's reflexes were instantaneous. Without a sound, he stepped forward, blocking the path, his posture rigid, but non-threatening. "You don't want to do that," Jason said, each word deliberate. The men's bravado faltered further. They began to understand that this young man was not ordinary. "Back off," Jason continued, taking another step forward, his calm authority filling the porch. "I've dealt with people far more dangerous than you. You're not in control here. This ends now." The leader's smirk vanished. His men hesitated, looking at each other, then at the house. The realization dawned. These were not ordinary homeowners. They were a family who could protect themselves, and the presence of a Special Forces veteran changed everything. With tension at its peak, the HOA men slowly retreated, muttering excuses and warnings. Jason's gaze never left them until they disappeared down the street. Michael exhaled, a mixture of relief and awe washing over him. Once the black SUVs were gone, Jason turned to his family. "It's over for now," he said, his voice steady, though a flicker of adrenaline lingered in his eyes. Michael came forward, placing a hand on his son's shoulder. "You were incredible," he said. Laura exhaled, tears of relief streaming down her cheeks. "I've never been so scared." Or so proud. Ethan ran to hug Jason, lifting him in a bear hug that conveyed both admiration and relief. Though the immediate threat had passed, the Johnsons knew the HOA could attempt more harassment in the future. But with Jason at their side, they felt a sense of security stronger than any legal notice or fine could enforce. The day faded into evening, and the suburban streets returned to their normal rhythm. Yet for the Johnsons, everything had changed. They had learned that courage, preparation, and a steadfast family bond could confront even the most ridiculous challenges. That night, the Johnsons gathered in the living room, lights soft and warm. Michael reflected on the surreal events. $5 fine had nearly escalated into a real confrontation, but Jason's presence had turned the tide. Ethan whispered, "I hope I can be brave like him one day." Jason smiled, kneeling to meet his little brother's eyes. "Bravery isn't about fighting," he said. "It's about standing for what's right and protecting those you love." Laura held both her sons close, tears of gratitude in her eyes. They were a family bound not just by blood, but by trust, courage, and the knowledge that no fake authority could ever break their unity. Outside, the sun set gently over the suburban rooftops. The day's chaos was gone, but the story, the lesson, would remain in their hearts forever. Courage, love, and unwavering resolve had won the day.